I just went on one of the most insane trips of my life. I visited family, hung out with friends old and new, survived 8 flights, went places I'd never been before, rode some crazy rides, and even attended some life-changing concerts. Here's how it all went down. And this is part 8, the big show. Back to the beginning. Ozzy and Black Sabbath's final concert. After a full week of chaotic traveling, it was finally time for the big show, the main reason we were over there in the UK to begin with. And after losing my USB adapter and almost running out of space, I was up all night trying to figure out how to charge all my devices and move enough stuff off of my phone to have enough space to record stuff for the show. And oh man, I was sleep deprived and in need of a shower, but I was just hyped. It was the day of the show. I couldn't believe it. Well, I almost can't believe I'm saying this, but today is the big day. Not gonna do as much of these little videos like this because I'm starting to run out of space on my phone, but today's the fucking day, baby. It was time to get up, get ready, and get going. While we were getting ready, my dad shot me a text of my yearbook photo from my freshman year of high school, and I was wearing my Diary of a Madman shirt. So I took a selfie and shot it back his way, saying, "Look, same shirt, almost 20 years later." He asked if that was the same shirt or a replacement. I was like, "No, this is the original shirt." It's kind of a crazy coincidence. So yeah, we pretty much just grabbed all of our shit and hopped in the car, made our way down to Aston, and we had some fun on the way there.
Hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed minds. Oh Lord, yeah.
When we got tickets, by the time I was let in to buy the tickets, the only ones that were left were the MasterCard VIP fancy pants tickets. And luckily I'd just gotten a MasterCard like a few months before that. So because of that, Jake and I had early entry tickets. So the plan is that they would drop me off near the entrance somewhere. I would figure out where the early entrance queue was, and I'd basically just get in line, and then they would find somewhere to park and meet me there. We're fucking here, or at least I am. Figure out where the early entry is. So I walked around until I figured out where everyone was getting in line for the early entry, and it was different than I expected. It was basically just this little hilly area across the street, and what I didn't realize was that those VIP tickets also came with a goodie bag. That goodie bag. So they actually found parking pretty quickly too, since we were there so early compared to everybody else. So since Jake had a VIP ticket too, he got in line, got his goodie bag with me. And then the girls, I don't even know what they did. They were just out and about, I guess. I think they just went and looked at the merch, and we did that too. There was a merch booth set up kind of by the VIP area. I didn't even realize it, but because all that was available were VIP tickets, we got like a fucking goodie bag with like a vinyl record and a beanie, concert poster. Hell yeah. So we got our shirts and stuff, we had our goodie bags, and then Cassidy eventually made it to the venue too. And since she was kind of outside, we handed her our goodie bags and she just walked them back to the car, so that came in clutch, because then we didn't have to worry about all of our cool stuff getting messed up in the show. So then we basically just stood around for a few hours. They had a crew going around interviewing people. They delayed the early entry a little bit, but eventually we got let into the venue and ran out to get in our spot. Alright, we're in. Let's fucking do it. Fucking here. Oh man, and getting to that venue, just being there in front of the stage was like such a relief. Like so many crazy things had happened on this trip already, and I was like, okay, I made it. I'm like in the venue. I'm not going to miss it at this point. I'm not going to get like, I can't get kicked out. I can't get like somehow busted for something and not be allowed into the show. I was like, all these worries I had were just gone, and I was finally there. And then once I was there, I was like, oh shit, I'm here. This is it. It was all starting to come together. It was all starting to like really hit at that point, and it felt crazy.
It's hard to believe this is real life right now, but look at this shit. Right fucking there.
So we ran into the middle, like maybe one or two people back from the barrier. And then we realized that if we were standing there, the way that the stage was shaped, it kind of protruded right in the center. We wouldn't be able to see the drums like at all. And of course, people are going to be really piling in there. So we actually moved over to the right a bit. That gave us a nice clean view of the drum kit, which we were both interested in being able to see drums. None of us had seen Bill Ward on drums before. So that was pretty exciting. And standing right in front of us was our dude that was there from Sweden. He had a little Swedish flag, and he was wearing a battle jacket that he had made during the Monsters of Rock tour in 1986 that he still had and was wearing. And he was pretty chill. He put our waters down by the barrier in front of him. He held my nuts the whole time. Had a little bag of nuts with me that I was snacking on, so he put that down by the barrier to make sure they would stay safe. It was cool. He was a homie. But yeah, that was like a little bit after 11, and the show wasn't starting until 1. So we had a couple hours to just kind of stand around and take it all in. I wasn't going to risk losing that spot, so I stood the entire time. Eventually, Daff and Zoe were let in with the regular entry crowd, so they got pretty close to us, a few people back. Eventually, Jake went and grabbed food and went to the bathroom, and Cassidy got secondhand tickets right before the show, so he went and did a little mission to get her into the Golden Circle, which was successful. So he was kind of running around doing all that. I was just like, nope, I'm standing here. I'm not losing this spot, which is weird for me. Usually I'm just running around going in the pit and stuff, but not for this show. So once we had done all that, we had stood around for a few hours just chit-chatting. It was actually starting to start, and oh man, it was exciting. Couple people came out and talked. They threw some huge beach balls into the crowd, kind of like what they did at Metallica's M72 tour. Then first up was Mastodon, which I was kind of surprised by. I didn't think they were going to be the ones going first, but they were, and I think they fucking killed it. This was kind of our first glance at what every band's set was going to be like. They were going to play a few of their own and then one or two Ozzy or Sabbath covers. And they went with Supernaut, which, dude, like I said, I think they nailed it. It was great way to start the show. Then even that had a surprise. Supernaut has that big drum fill, a little drum section in it. So I brought a few other drummers out to kind of jam along with it. It was pretty cool. Almost done editing the video, Josh here. I don't know if you caught that, but Eli Casagrande was on stage right there. So basically, Arizona mentioned, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, here's your Arizona geography lesson for the day. There's two towns called Eloy and Casagrande right next to each other, kind of in between Phoenix and Tucson. The more you know. So then after Mastodon got things rolling, up next was Rival Sons, which I've seen them open for Sabbath a few times, so it kind of seems like Sabbath really likes touring with them and stuff. So when I saw them on the bill, I was like, okay, that makes sense. But I thought they'd also be like the first act, which, like I said, I was kind of surprised that Mastodon went before them. But that being said, Mastodon was like a really good, explosive way to start the show. But Rival Sons did a cover of Electric Funeral. And remember that they did a cover of Electric Funeral here. And then after that, we finally got our first glimpse of the host of the show, Jason Momoa.
We are the luckiest motherfuckers in the world!
was another thing that was surprising. I kind of thought with him being the host, he'd kind of come out between every band and kind of keep the crowd hyped up in between sets at least a little bit, but he only popped in like a handful of times throughout like the whole show, which was like 10 or 11 hours total, so he wasn't out all that often. Another weird thing was he had a different shirt on every time that he came out.
The music of Black Sabbath has influenced and inspired musicians of many different genres.
But that was also something that was just kind of interesting to notice. But this first time he came out, it was to get us hyped for Anthrax. And the real question was, how many songs would they play? Because, you know, we had just seen them 2 days before at the Slayer show, and they only played 4 songs there, which at that point, for Jake and I, was a new record of least amount of songs we've ever seen Anthrax play in a set. And we had a feeling that they were going to break that record again here today. And we were right, because they played 2. And that Into the Void cover hit. And up next was Hailstorm, which I've seen before, and they actually were just here like a week ago in Phoenix, but I missed out on them. But I gotta say, they actually kind of blew me away. There's like their Perry Mason cover, one of the highlights of the night actually. Yeah, that was a great cover. Like, that's one of the covers I've actually gone back and listened to after the fact a few times. Solid. Speaking of solid, up next, Lamb of God. They pretty much played what you'd expect from the last couple songs at a Lamb of God show, their typical kind of encore. But then they hit us with Children of the Grave. Once again, pretty good cover. So after Lamb got wrapped up their set, it was time for the first of the supergroups. Now, these supergroups were kind of just like people coming and going on and off the stage. So in the moment, it was kind of hard to keep track of who was all there and stuff. You know, you're kind of looking around at everybody. The first song that was played was "The Ultimate Sin" with Lizzie Hale and David Ellefson, which, and thanks to David Ellefson being there, that's also the closest I'll ever get to going to a Big Four concert. It was kind of like the big 3 1/4. I was swinging my Arizona beanie around trying to get his attention. So, you know, he lives here. That was the first sort of Arizona mention of the day. Oh, second sort of almost Arizona mention. And Jakey Lee came out for Ultimate Sin too, which was sick. It was cool to actually get to see him play, because whoever gets to see that. Then after that, David Draymond came out, and this was kind of funny. I didn't film it, but like he got like, it wasn't like as crazy as a lot of people were kind of writing about after the fact, but you could hear that people were booing him. And at the time, I didn't know that he had been like signing bombs for Israel, so I just thought people didn't like Disturbed. I was like, come on, like Disturbed's all right. They're not too bad. Like I said, I didn't know that. I didn't know that he had been like literally signing bombs for Israel. So that's a little more understandable, you know, especially like right after Lamb of God had just gotten done playing "Children of the Grave," one of Sabbath's many war protest songs. So they started out with "Shot in the Dark." And then Sweet Leaf and a Scotty Inn came out for that one. That was kind of cool. See him up again there for a little bit. And then one of my favorite Ozzy songs ever, "Believer." This is another thing. It was kind of like every time you heard a band play a song, you're kind of like you're hyped to hear the song, but you're a little bummed because that was like, okay, scratch that one off the list of when they were going to see Ozzy or Sabbath play. So "Believer" was a little bit like, oh man, okay, I won't get to see Ozzy play it, but at least I'm getting to see "Believer" live. But you know, at that point, I was like, anything I don't get to hear live today and never get to hear again. So it was pretty sick to hear "Believer." Frank Bello came out to replace David Ellefson for that one. Then after Believer was another one of those highlights of the whole show, Youngblood singing Changes. Now, I'd never heard of Youngblood up to this point. None of us had ever really heard of him. The girls knew that Ozzy really loved this kid for some reason. I think one of them mentioned that they saw a meme that was like, I wish my dad loved me as much as Ozzy Osbourne loves Youngblood. So I didn't know what to expect, and because of that, it blew us all out of the water. And also, thanks to this performance, I got my claim to fame. You can see me getting bonked in the head by one of those giant beach balls on the live stream.
I'm going!
And then once the entire stadium had become one giant slipping hazard from all of our tears, that was the end of the first block of supergroups. And now's a good time to mention kind of what they were playing on the screens in between all of the bands. So one of the things that Ozzy would do before his shows, from what I've gathered, since I never actually got to see one of his normal shows, he would often have these little skits where they would take footage of commercials or movies, and with the power of movie magic, insert him into these clips in comedic ways. So they were kind of doing stuff like that in between sets. It was that. They would sometimes have videos of fans talking, or they would have other famous artists that couldn't be there, just playing videos of them thanking Ozzy for everything he's done and congratulating him on his career and things like that.
History. Now let's go crazy!
Oh my God! Ozzy Osbourne bit Kitty's head off! You bastard! You bastards!
Well, one of the ones that was kind of cooler was a little surprise performance by a familiar face and some children of familiar faces doing Mr. Crowley. So yeah, we got a video of Zach Black doing Mr. Crowley with Scott Ian and Tom Morello's sons, and kind of a School of Rock moment, but at the same time it was kind of a bummer because we knew since we got to see somebody playing Mr. Crowley, we weren't going to see it live. And up next was Alice in Chains. And I think it was the day before that Jake and I were in the car, we turned on Electric Funeral. I started doing a harmony, like a third harmony above the regular vocal line while we were singing it. And Jake pointed out that would actually be really sick if that was the song that Alice in Chains did, but we knew that they weren't going to do it because Rival Sons had already done Electric Funeral. Remember, Rival Sons already did Electric Funeral. So no, Alice in Chains did not play Electric Funeral, but they killed Fairies Wear Boots, which is a classic. And then up next, we got Gojira. And it wasn't just Gojira, they had a special guest. They had Marina Viati, the same singer who did Mea Culpa with them at the Olympics. And oh yeah, we got it here too. It was pretty sick. Gojira at the Olympics, I think, was another one of those big moments in metal history. That was like one of the biggest audiences of metal bands that ever really had, with how many people watch the Olympics. So they've been really carrying that torch the last couple years, I think. And having Marina there to do the opera parts was like just a little cherry on top. So that was pretty cool. And if that wasn't enough for you, they fucking nailed Under the Sun. Great song choice for them. Super heavy. So yeah, Gojira nailed it. Mea Culpa gives me goosebumps. And after that, they started setting up 3 drum kits, so we knew that another supergroup was coming up next. And they started out with Symptom of the Universe. But I gotta say, I was a little disappointed just because, like, dude, Symptom of the Universe, if it's not my favorite Sabbath song, it's definitely top 3. So it was a little bit of a bummer for them to just turn that into a drum off instead of actually playing it. But still, I mean, it's Symptom of the Universe, man. So then after some faffing about on the drums, we got back to the actual supergroups. And this time, Billy Corgan came out. Now, I'm not really a Smashing Pumpkins fan. I don't like Billy's voice. I would have been quicker to boo him than David Draymond, if, because I didn't know of the bomb thing at the time. So I was, a little skeptical about it. But the fact that KK Downing came out after that made up for it, because I knew something cool was going to happen at that point. So I just saw KK's Priest like last year, and dude, the dude can still shred. But the song that they played was actually pretty unexpected, because they went with Breaking the Law, which famously not by Ozzy Osbourne or Black Sabbath. But like, hey, who can complain? But then after that, they busted out Snowblind, which famously is a Black Sabbath song. And after that, we got another lineup switch for the supergroup. This time, Nuno Bettencourt came back out. Vernon Reid from Living Colour popped up. And then we had the next surprise guest. Yeah, that was another thing, is some of these artists were not like announced beforehand. They were kept under wraps. And Sammy Hagar was one of them. And he came out looking like just peak Boomer. Fresh off the yacht Boomer, you know what I mean? It's kind of just giving off those vibes. But it was okay, because they played another banger off of Diary of a Madman, Flying High Again. So after Sammy kind of stumbled his way through Flying High Again, talked about how the next song was the first song he ever written. Yeah, then they just went into Rock Candy, which I felt like kind of dragged on, honestly. Like, we only had so much time and there were so many bands playing. So when Sammy came out and played Rock Candy for like 20 minutes, it was like, okay, I'd rather be hearing something else by Ozzy, but it's okay. We'll get through it. Especially because up next we had Papa from Ghost, which, I like some Ghost. So that was a welcome change from Sammy, and especially because they played an Ozzy song. They knocked out Bark at the Moon, which surprisingly Jakey Lee didn't play, but you can hardly blame the guy. He got shot, like a year ago? So I'm just glad he was there. But in the end of the day, it was okay because Nuno fucking just knocked that out of the park too. Solid. apparently that was too busy singing along with Bark at the Moon because that's all I recorded of it. Little do I know, the next big surprise was about to happen. Another one of those artists that they kept under wraps and didn't tell anybody about was about to enter the stage, and that man was Steven Tyler. And Ronnie Wood. I mean, and honestly, that was pretty cool because Aerosmith canceled like the last part of their farewell tour because Steven blew out his voice. So that was cool getting to see him again. My first concert was Motley Crue and Aerosmith, and I realized that the last time I had seen Steven Tyler sing was at that show. That was pretty cool. They opened it up with The Train Kept Rolling, and then they went into Walk This Way. So after playing two not Black Sabbath songs, we were kind of hoping at that point that would be like all the other bands where they play a couple of their own and they knock out some Sabbath or some Ozzy. But what happened next was totally unexpected. Now I need to preface this. Before the show, we were all kind of speculating who these special guests were going to be. Some of us were thinking, oh, how incredible it would be if Sharon somehow pulled enough strings to get like Paul McCartney to come play, or maybe even Ringo, because obviously Ozzy was like a huge Beatles fan and they were one of his biggest inspirations to get into music in the first place. Or like, what if one of the Zeppelin boys came out, because like, I know at least John Bonham was from the area roughly, and they had a lot of history together, so like how cool it would be if they came out and played something. Like I never got to see Zeppelin in any shape or form at all in my life. So then imagine my shock when my ears started hearing Whole Lotta Love. We were all just kind of looking around like, oh, it's happening. Who's it gonna be? Who's coming out? And it was no one. They just played it, which again was cool, but like, damn, I wonder if they were like trying to get one of them out there and it just didn't work or something. I don't know, but hey, man, you can't complain about hearing Zeppelin live, even if it's not anybody from Zeppelin playing it. And with that, we came to the conclusion of all the supergroups. That was it. Once they were through, Jason Momoa came back out and announced that the next band was one he was particularly excited about because he was planning on hopping in the pit with everybody. Now, like I said, normally that's where I'm usually found at shows, but not this one. I was not giving up my good spot, even though I was getting pushed further and further back. And the band that Jason was looking forward to hopping in the pit with was Pantera.
Because one of these guys, I absolutely must get into the pit with all you motherfuckers, so please, make some space for me, I'm coming in. Hey, please welcome Pantera!
Walk On, Homeboy, indeed. And Pantera was actually the first band to do 2 covers. We kind of all had a suspicion they'd whip out Planet Caravan, but we didn't know that they were going to do 2, or what else they could potentially be doing. I mean, we had some ideas. We figured Planet Caravan was a good bet, and we were right.
Y'all sing it if you know it, man. It's called Planet Caravan.
Did you catch that? You remember what I said yesterday? I told you guys to remember. Rival Sons played Electric Funeral. And what was one of those other songs that Pantera's covered before? That's right, Electric Funeral. So yeah, they played Electric Funeral too. And at the time, I was kind of like, I was almost gaslighting myself. I was like, did I hear this already? I was like, yeah. Wait a sec, we've heard this already. So, that was kind of funny. So yeah, we get 2 Electric Funerals, but hearing Pantera play it, can't complain, especially with Zach on guitar is interesting, because that's also kind of like the closest to seeing Zach Sabbath I've ever come to. It's a little bonus there. Interesting hearing 2 different takes on it. Good stuff. So then after more of those Ozzy concert intro parody videos,
But I lay my fingers upon you.
I'd knock that shit off, promise you.
Nah, you motherfucker.
another prominent 90s band came out. And this one was one my wife was especially jealous that I got to see, because Tool is one of her favorite bands. Before we started dating, she had only been to like a couple concerts, and Tool was one of them. So she was pretty jealous when she found out that Tool was on this bill. And they played a couple that hit especially close to home, if you catch my drift. Now, what was interesting was Tool didn't actually close with their Sabbath cover. They played it as their second song out of 3. When I heard what it was, I was actually especially excited about it. And my wife and I did IVF to have our son, and also for her current pregnancy was also done through IVF. So I used to sing Hand of Doom when I was giving her shots. I would say, hey, this is our IVF song, because you need someone to help you stick the needle in, yeah. Yesterday I got distracted trying to get my recording setup put back together to record myself playing a little bit of Hand of Doom, and I wasted all my time. Then my son woke back up, so it's once again the next day, and I had a cactus fall on my head today, so that was pretty fun. Time to do some cactus rescue, 'cause this pot is toast. We did it! Sorta. It fell on my head. That's okay. We'll see if we can graft it to itself. Speaking of Arizona things, so after we were all told to go to swim school, it was time for Slayer. Now, I was hyped for Slayer even though we just saw them 2 days prior in Cardiff. But even with that, I was pretty, again, one of the highlights of the show for me because I was surprised by them. Their cover choice was unexpected, and the way they worked it into their set was also, in my opinion, done really well and pretty cool. And because it was kind of unexpected, I didn't really get the best footage of it. Basically what they did... see what I did there? Basically what they did was they went into Wicked World, but then, you know how in the middle of the track it kind of cuts out for a bit and has a little guitar solo, and then it comes back in with the whole band? What they did was they did Wicked World, and then instead of cutting out to a guitar solo, they cut out to South of Heaven, and then when South of Heaven was done, they slipped back into the end part of Wicked World, and I was like, well done. That was good. That was probably the most creative way anybody at the whole show slipped Sabbath into their set. So props to Slayer for that. That was pretty sick. After they went back into Wicked World and closed that one out, they finished their show with Raining Blood and Angel of Death like they typically do. Then after that, it was on to something completely different. Just about as completely different as it got. Because up next was Guns N' Roses. And oh man, I thought they were doing pretty well at first. Once again, I was pretty surprised by their cover choice, but It was in a good way. They had a piano on stage, so naturally they broke out It's Alright, which is something they've played live a ton, which I don't even know how many people realize that that's a Black Sabbath song. But yeah, that's the song of a Technical Ecstasy that Bill sings. So Axl came out and started out the show with that. But then they went into Never Say Die, which when you think about it, out of all the Black Sabbath songs, that one's like pretty Guns N' Roses. I was like, you know what? Good choices for them. So they already had 2 Sabbath songs down, and then they went into Junior's Eyes, another deep cut, but it was like, okay, another one, I could see this being pretty Guns N' Roses, another good choice. So they got done with Junior's Eyes, and then Axl came out and said that the next song was Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and immediately I was like, oh dear God, oh no, this is gonna be bad. Why, out of all the bands that could have done Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, why would Guns N' Roses do it? That's such a heavy song. That has one of their earliest, like, true breakdowns in metal history. And Guns N' Roses playing it, not only that, but it's so high-pitched in terms of vocals. That's some of the highest notes Ozzy ever sang in Black Sabbath. I mean, Axl's just... We've all seen the Mickey Mouse memes. He goes Mickey Mouse mode these days when he's live, when he has to sing high notes. So I was like, it's gonna be bad. And it was even worse than I thought it would get. Because during that breakdown, he kept coming in early and getting more and more offbeat with the rest of the band. It literally got so bad that the crowd started booing, and I was like, okay, this justified. This one is justified. That, oh man, it was rough. Like, up to that point, I was like, dude, they're nailing this so far. And this is my first time seeing Guns N' Roses live too, by the way, so this was something. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath was rough. But luckily that was their last Sabbath cover. They did 4 in total. And then after that they just hit us with Welcome to the Jungle in Paradise City and called it a night. And once again, I didn't capture every one of those moments, but here's what I got. At least after that, we got some pretty funny Ozzy edits. Not gonna lie, there was a part of me that was hoping that last clip would be like a surprise entrance by Ringo or Paul because, you know, Ozzy loved the Beatles. A lot of us were kind of like, oh, how special would that be for him if he got to like jam with the Beatles at least a little bit. But it didn't really make a lot of sense. If there are any two people in the world that wouldn't make sense to go before Metallica, it would be them. And Metallica was next. And even just Metallica playing before Ozzy was kind of something special in itself. So one of the reasons that Metallica got as big as they did was because they opened for Ozzy in '86 promoting Master of Puppets. So there's a chance Metallica wouldn't be the legends that they are today if it wasn't for Ozzy. So getting to see them open for him again was like, I never thought I'd have a chance to see that. But here I am, seeing it.
Metallica.
Ozzy Osbourne. This is fucking nuts. He's gonna be here in 1986 again.
Dude, Metallica crushed it. Like, I know I'm biased, because Metallica and Megadeth are my favorite bands, but like, every time I see Metallica, I feel like they play better than the last time I seen them. Like, they just did well. Simple as. And what's cool is like they played 2 songs off of The Ride the Lightning, my favorite album, and 2 songs off of Master Puppets. So it was almost like a very abridged version of the set list they would have played opening for Ozzy anyway. So that like it was just cool. Oh, and not to mention the covers too. Like how could I forget that? Hole in the Sky is one of my favorite Sabbath songs. Sabotage, I think, might be my favorite Sabbath album. And then Johnny Blade, that just somehow made like total sense for them, especially if you think of it in the context of like 90s Metallica. They kind of, kind of had like load reload vibes going on. Yeah, all around solid set. Solid set. With Metallica leaving the stage, that was the end of all the opening acts. It was time for Ozzy and Sabbath to hit the stage. I feel like now's a good time to kind of talk about something that at least I picked up on, or I was feeling kind of throughout the show. And it was this weird kind of like disjointed feeling of just kind of about the whole event. Because on one hand, it was like, this is Black Sabbath's final show again, but because it's Ozzy's last show, for real. So like a lot of the imagery and like the merch and stuff, things that we were seeing before the show and everything, like especially in Birmingham the day before, it was just nothing but Black Sabbath, Black Sabbath, Black Sabbath, except for like the Ozzy exhibit in the museum. But it was kind of like in my head, I was almost more focused on the fact that this was Black Sabbath's last show than Ozzy's last show, even though it was, of course, both. And this is also something that makes me think that maybe I wasn't the only person who felt this way, was just talking with the homies after the show and stuff. We were kind of expecting there to be more talk about kind of Black Sabbath's career at the show, just because, like we said, there's so much going on around town and stuff. So it's kind of this weird thing where we went into it expecting it to be like Sabbath, Sabbath, Sabbath. It almost felt like the bands kind of felt that way too, because most of the bands did Sabbath covers. Like I think Hailstorm was the only band that did like an Ozzy solo career cover, other than the supergroups, which played a few Ozzy tracks, but also played Sabbath tracks. And even when members of the bands were talking to the crowd, it was almost always talking about Sabbath, like, thank you, Sabbath, we wouldn't be here without Sabbath, they're the reason metal exists, blah, blah, blah. But then the venue, or maybe I should say like the stage production, was more Ozzy focused, where in between all the shows, it was other musicians and celebrities and stuff thanking Ozzy for his career and congratulating him on his retirement and things like that.
We're gonna miss you on stage, but I will be back for your show on supergroups, and I'll be there. Love you.
Best day ever for you. You deserve it. You've been through so much crap during the last few years.
So they were playing those and then the Ozzy edits in between every set. So it was like, yeah, so like I said, it was kind of like beforehand, it was like Sabbath, Sabbath, Sabbath. And then all the bands were like Sabbath, Sabbath, Sabbath. But then the screens were just like Ozzy, Ozzy, Ozzy. Oi, oi, oi. So it gave it, like I said, this kind of like disjointed feeling. And then because we had been seeing all the Sabbath stuff around town and like all the discourse and everything like I was talking about was all kind of Sabbath and the history of Sabbath focused. And so we were kind of surprised that there wasn't as much stuff like that going on in between the sets. Like I don't even think there was really any mention of Tony, Geezer, and Bill like at all. And I felt like one of the big special things was Bill was actually playing with them for the first time in 20 years. Like I know Randy from Lamb of God shouted out Geezer by name as the person who wrote the lyrics to Children of the Grave. And there were a couple other, I don't remember who off the top of my head, but people were shouting out the band Black Sabbath like by the like every member of the band, not just Ozzy specifically. But nothing like that ever came up on the screens in between the sets or anything like that. So we were kind of surprised that they didn't have any of that history or anything about them. And not even just for like Sabbath, also for like Ozzy and the history of his solo career and the musicians he had played with and things like that. Because there wasn't really any mention of that. It was basically just Ozzy. We even got to see some of his musicians that he played with live there because they were playing as parts of the supergroup, like Rudy Sarzo and Jakey Lee. Obviously, Rob Trujillo was there in Metallica, and he played with Ozzy for a long time. And Zakk Wylde, of course, was there with Pantera and with Ozzy. We kind of all just expected there to be like some shouts out to musicians that helped Ozzy make his career because as obviously as important as he was to like the Ozzy Osbourne solo project, he wasn't like the main person coming up with the music. Oftentimes, like, his band members would be the ones coming up with lyrics, and of course they'd be putting together the instrumentation and stuff. So we kind of expected something like that to happen, and it hadn't happened until that point in the night, where they at least had a little shout out to, of course, Randy Rhoads.
Career created a catalog of music that has thrilled and inspired generations of musicians and hard rock fans. Birmingham, please give it up for the late, great Randy Rhoads.
My brother Randy and my entire family, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. His spirit lives on, he shines bright. God bless you all, and never forget my brother Randy. Thank you.
Fucking fan, great player, man. He loved it. He loved playing guitar. You can tell he was fucking great, man.
That was pretty cool to see. Randy got a shout out, and it was kind of a quick shout out, but still a shout out, just more than like anybody else got. It was definitely easy to feel that at the time, because obviously we didn't know that Ozzy only had a few weeks, not even a few, a couple weeks to live. But that's kind of just what we were feeling at the time. But then Ozzy hit the stage, and all that just disappeared, because holy fuck, dude. Ozzy fucking Osbourne, man. I still can't believe I got to see this. Dude, you could just tell Ozzy was so happy to be there, but you could also tell how hard it was for him to be there. He was putting everything he had into it, and he was doing well, man. His whole set, he was pretty on point. He was up there belting it out and just energetic, other than the fact that he wasn't hobbling around on stage like he was the last time I saw him in 2016. Dude, he was still there. That's like what's so tragic about it. It's like he still wanted to just be out there rocking. He just wanted that so bad. And I'm just so happy he got to do it, man. Everybody there was just so happy for him. Like every musician that came out and thanked him, they were all backstage with him before the show. Like they could all tell. You could tell they could tell how excited he was that his one last thing that he wanted to be able to do was he had to play live at least one last time. Like in interviews, he would say, no option. He has to do it. You'd see things pop up on social media of him working out and people talking about how hard he's working and how much effort he was putting into it just because he wanted this show to happen. And now it was finally his time to hit the stage one last time. I mean, what a show he put on.
and then look like Andy Colby. And I don't know what to say, man. I've been up laid up for like fucking 6 years. And so you've got no idea how I feel. From the bottom of my heart.
Oh man, so fucking good. I mentioned this in the video that I put out after Ozzy died, where when he said that we had, yeah, when he said that we had no idea how it made him feel to be there, I just like immediately got choked up and yelled back, "Yes, we do." We were all so happy to be there, man. I didn't catch a video of it, but I did actually catch some of it. At the end of the set, they shot out these confetti cannons with a bunch of this confetti. I scooped up a bunch of Ozzy confetti and then just kind of stood there in shock that I finally got to see Ozzy's solo act live. Yeah, he really gave it his all, and he wasn't even done yet because up next was Black Sabbath, the main event. the final act of the night.
Yo, I used to have that fucking toy growing up. Sick.
Oh man, the hype was real. I was so pumped. I never thought I'd get to see Sabbath again after 2016, and here it was. The whole reason for the trip. I just finally got to see Ozzy, and now this was the last little bit. Just Black Sabbath. And once again, it was fantastic. And the whole show, the way that the stage worked was the center of it actually rotated. So what would happen is one band would be playing their set, and then back here, they'd be setting up the next band's equipment and everything. And since they were setting up the back half of the stage while the front half had the band performing, it only took a couple minutes between sets to finish setting up, and then they'd just rotate the stage again to get the setup band ready, and then they'd start breaking down this stage and do it all again. It took longer between Ozzy's set and Black Sabbath's set, so I figured that was just to give Ozzy some rest, and you could tell he needed it, because when he came on with Black Sabbath, he wasn't singing as well at first. He was definitely very flat, not just like out of tune flat, but like multiple steps below the right key. You know, like I said, man, he was giving it his all. He was putting on the best show he could, and nobody was sitting there thinking, oh man, I can't believe Ozzy's singing out of tune right now. It was just like, dude, this fucking legend, man. He's just going for it. But it wasn't just him. It was getting to see Geezer again, getting to see Tony again, getting to see Bill Ward for once. The first time I ever got to see Bill. And go back and watch the first video in this vlog series, the announcement video. I was so hyped that I was finally getting to see Bill live, because he was the one original member I never got to see. Out of everybody in terms of performance, dude, fucking Geezer and Tony were just both killing it. The Geezer was absolutely geezing, dude. Like, what a monster on bass. Dude, he was just fucking going ham. And like Tony, of course, always fantastic. Every time I've seen Sabbath, I was just like starstruck. Like, holy shit, there's Tony fucking Iommi right there. No different this time. And, you know, just the whole band up there one last time in their hometown. Dude, that was special, man. That was special for everybody. It was special for every single person in the crowd, every single person on that stage, every single person backstage who had just gotten done playing their sets. Man, couldn't really ask for much more. So here's everything I got of Black Sabbath's final set, their final show.
There's a song called Paranoid.
And then that was it. That was the end of Black Sabbath's live performances. They set off the confetti cannons, they started launching some fireworks, and then we were all just sitting there taking it in. Geezer and Tony waved to the crowd and walked off. Of course, Ozzy was just sitting there waving to the crowd. Geezer came back and gave Ozzy a cake. And then they started to rotate the stage away, and that was just it. That was like the end of the first era of heavy metal. The first heavy metal band, the band that invented the genre, just finished their last show ever. Nobody even knew at the moment that in just a couple of weeks we would lose the singer of that band. But even in that moment, the finality of it was just starting to seep in. After finding out about the show in February, staying up all night, all week to try to get tickets, making all of our travel plans, flying halfway across the globe, stressing about this and that for so long, that was it. It had just come to an end. No more Sabbath. There isn't a heavy metal band in existence that can't trace its roots back to Black Sabbath, and this genre of music that so many of us love around the world for 55 years was about to walk off the stage for the last time after putting on a short but sweet set. It didn't even feel real, man. Still kind of doesn't. Just being there was everything for everybody, especially those four guys on stage together one last time.
Fucking Sabbath! Yeah! Fuck yeah!
was fucking it. That just happened. Holy shit. Whoa, fucking hell.
And yeah, I got some of that Black Sabbath confetti too. So with the show over, we took a couple more pictures together. Jake and I grabbed a couple of silly selfies, and then I started to get a little emotional. And then we all joined together for a big group selfie, and we asked some guy to take our photo, and as he was trying to, the Swedish homie walked in the way, and the guy was like, "Hey, get out of there." And I was like, "No, come join us." So we took a couple with him, and then we took some of just our group, then left the venue, walked back to the car. I wasn't parked too far away, and when we got back to the car, I sat down for the first time since 8:30 that morning. And at the time, I didn't even realize how close Ozzy's childhood home was to the stadium itself, so we definitely could have just walked over there. I think we parked, I don't remember exactly where we parked off the top of my head, but we were like right there. We could have just walked around the corner and been at Ozzy's house, basically. But we didn't. Instead, we went down to the Flapper, local spot in Birmingham, where we heard that they were playing the live stream, kind of having an after party. So we drove over there, and dude, that was good. Like, the live stream was delayed by 2 hours, so by the time we got there was right about when Ozzy was starting to play. Everybody was in such high spirits, and everybody was just singing and having a good time and smiling and dancing around together. Dude, it just felt so good. It was like a perfect way to end the night. It was funny too, because we dropped off Dapso and Cassidy, and then Jake and I went to try to find parking somewhere. And we found parking pretty quickly, just right around the corner on the street. We walked back over there, and the bouncers at the gate weren't gonna let us in at first. They're like, "Oh, sorry, we're full." We were like, "No." We were like so bummed. So then we like texted the girls, told them to come out because they weren't going to let us in. And then they rolled up and they started talking with us, and they started talking with the guards and stuff. And eventually it was funny. It was like literally like the ratio thing where they let us in because we were with chicks. Good thing. It's good to travel in a diverse crew because you might get into parties and stuff they might not otherwise get into. So the lesson learned is a bird in your band is worth freeing the flapper, isn't it?
Afterparty. Afterparty already has fucking footage of the concert. Insane. Yeah! We just saw this 2 hours ago.
one fun thing that we were doing was cheering "Take It Off" every time we saw Billboard, because we all knew that he was going to take his shirt off at one point in the stream. Dude, what a fucking legend. 0 fucks given by that man. Aspirational for sure.
The flapper, baby. Fucking vibes were immaculate. Hip hip. That shit was sick.
So at that point, it was after midnight. We were hungry. Found a nearby restaurant, got some food, just ate, talked about how crazy that whole day was, talked to each other about our trips, and just kind of unwound. So we got back to the car. Cassidy called an Uber to take her back to her hotel, but not after first finding a cool cat.
Cassie's like, oh, is that a British cat? Oh, look at that bloke. There he goes, isn't it?
And then, yeah, that was pretty much it. We just drove back to the Airbnb, basically just passed out, although I stayed up for quite a bit because I had to figure out my charging situation again. I got the tickets for Alton Towers. I packed my bag and everything and passed out on the couch. And although the main event of our whole adventure had just come to a close, there's still a little bit more to do on this trip. For me, I still had the day at Alton Towers with Jake the next day. The girls were all going back to London. And then the next day was my flight home, and Jake was off to Liverpool or whatever he did after I had left. So make sure to check out the next installment, because we're heading over to Alton Towers and then even doing a little bit more adventuring after that through the Misty Mountains.
If we die in the mists, then send the elementals to come get us.
If I die in the mist, Danielle, I love you. AJ, I love you.
In real time, it's going to take a while because since I worked on this one first, I've actually got 7 more of these to do before I can get back to the Alton Towers trip. So I might just need to wait a little. I'm pretty slow to put these out, so we'll see. Or I'll see. Somebody will see. At least 3 people will see. There's not going to be that many people watching. And let's wrap it up with the spoils of war. Now, this is by far the most stuff I've gotten in a single day. Really, mainly because of the goodie bag that we didn't know that we were getting. So let's check it out. I think one of the coolest parts of the goodie bag was this Patient Number 9 record. And I gotta say, since I was packing light and only bringing carry-ons with me, this was the thing I was the most worried about. I made sure to be very careful to lay all my clothes out nice and evenly and try to make it as even pressure possible on every side. I was like pretending I was some sort of structural engineer trying to figure out how to fold my clothes to make sure that this thing wouldn't get too bent or warped or beat up on the flights. I think out of everything in the goodie bag, this is probably the coolest. It helps me add to my little baby record collection I've got going on right there. And then I guess I should mention the bag itself, because they were selling these at the merch booth too. I think one of these would run you about 25 quid. Inside it, it's got the concert poster. Yeah, this is pretty cool. It's got like a thermos. Yeah, so we got the concert thermos going on. Pretty sick. It's probably a little easier to see it that way. You got the concert fridge magnet, which you can use to spy on my editing timeline. And also had the bottle opener in there. You got a pack of cards. This one's sick. Got a patch. Oh yeah, this sick lanyard. This one's pretty cool. I like this. And also has the Henry pin, which is pretty sick. Such a cool design. Ooh, and then this one, the collector's giant ticket. I think that concludes this edition of Swiggity Swag. What's in the bag? Yeah, like I mentioned at the beginning, we didn't know that we were going to get this goodie bag. We only got it because the only tickets that were left were those MasterCard tickets. But the extra cost of the ticket more than paid for everything that was in this bag, because all this stuff was kind of expensive, especially since the dollar is a little weaker than it was when we bought the tickets. But that's also not all I got. Like I already mentioned, I got some confetti from Black Sabbath and Ozzy that was shot out the cannons. I've seen people put these into little keychains. I might try to do that because that'd be a cool gift to give people. A little Ozzy Black Sabbath's Final Show keychain. Also help keep those safe. Not a bad idea. Then the one thing that I actually purchased that day was a concert shirt. And it's kind of hard to really show this on camera, but the graphic is actually a little off-center, which is kind of funny. I saw somebody complaining about that online at one point, and I was like, oh, weird, mine's not like that. And then the next time I put it on, I was like, oh shit, it is. So this is a cool design. The purple on it is a little more towards pink in terms of hue compared to my Black Sabbath shoes that I have, like the Master of Reality purple, but it's still sick. It's got all the bands on the back, including Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit, who you might have caught was not there at all. Everybody's been speculating on who Sharon kicked off the bill, and there's part of me that thinks it was Fred Durst, just because, unless I missed the news that he had to cancel last minute, but he definitely was not there, and I think everybody else listed here was actually there. It doesn't list the surprise guests, because that would have been a big spoiler alert for all the people who bought these before the show. Ooh, and then one last thing that came in the goodie bag that I forgot to mention, but I've been wearing it in a lot of the clips in this video, but I'll just go get it anyway. And the last piece of merch, the one that I've been wearing more than any other that I've gotten for this whole trip, the Back to the Beginning beanie. It's like very subtle. The font is really small, and because of that it's hard to tell that it's supposed to be stylized like the show logo, but it's black and white. Kind of wish the lettering was purple though, because I feel like it would tie it into the identity of the concert a little bit more than just white. I have other black and white beanies, including my Ozzy beanie, and I also have a lot of purple things that I wear, but I don't have any purple beanies to wear with them, so missed opportunity there, merch people. I like this one, super comfy. I was very excited when I saw that there was a beanie in the goodie bag, because I wear beanies a lot. Keeps my ginger scalp safe from those deadly Arizona rays. After the fact, I was kind of bummed that I didn't think to buy an Ozzy specific shirt at the show, as this was the only Ozzy concert I ever got to go to. And I already have 3 Black Sabbath concert shirts from the 3 other Black Sabbath shows I'd seen. But like I mentioned earlier, I feel like going into the show, my brain was very focused on Black Sabbath for some reason more than Ozzy just on his own. So I wasn't thinking about that. I saw the merch and I was like, the coolest one is that Black Sabbath shirt. I like the purple. I like the design. But now, of course, after the fact, and especially since Ozzy died, I'm like, oh man, I never got an Ozzy concert shirt. Only Black Sabbath. So I'm kind of bummed. They had some cool designs too. But like I said, this was by far the most stuff I got on a day of the trip because of the goodie bag. With that out of the way, that concludes this installment. Make sure to dislike, unsubscribe, keep this video a secret so nobody ever finds it, and adios amigos.